video. So today, as you can see, we're all going to be doing something a little bit different, and today I'm going to go ahead and give you my top 5 building tips and tricks for The Sims 4. So I have just been making a list over the last week or so of different tips and tricks that I have for the game, and today I'm just going to go over 5, but if you really like this video then give it a thumbs up and let me know that you want to see another one like this, and I can give you even more tips and tricks in the future. So before we go any further and I give you the list, I just want to let you know that, of course, I'm not the best builder in this community. I have been building for a long time, and that's why I'm doing this video, so I can give you some tips and tricks for what I've learned over the last couple of years, but I'm nowhere as near good as people like, Kate Emerald, for example, so my list might be slightly different than what other people might be giving you, but hopefully you'll still find this helpful. And also, this list has tips for different types of levels of what builder you are, so the first 2 I would definitely say are really good for beginners, and then the other 3 could be for really anyone. So the first one is to make use of floor/house plans. So it might seem a very straightforward thing, but honestly these are really helpful, especially when you're starting out building, and even if you're a really advanced builder, they are sometimes still really helpful. I don't use them as much as I do now than what I did when I started, but I do still find them really useful now, because when I have problems with builds, it's normally actually just getting it started. So once I've got it started, everything else seems to flow fairly nicely for me, so it's just kind of getting the build started, and for that, floor plans and house plans and just pictures of homes really help. So a really good one is houseplans.com. I pretty much use this for all of my Real to Sims builds, and that's one type of video I do use full floor plans for, but for general speed builds, I don't use them as much. But as I was saying, house plans is a really good one because it does have categories where you can search by different architectural types. So if you have something in mind that you want to build, then you can search it by category and find something more specific. And I have a load of other filters as well that you can look around on to help you find the perfect build to recreate. And another thing I've mentioned a few times in the past is that when you're using floor plans and house plans, don't feel like you're really restricted and that you have to 100% accurately recreate that home, because it's really not the case. Nobody is going to be testing you on how well you can recreate the home, so just kind of do what you want with it. If, for example, you like one part of the home, but then on another part of it you're like, well, I think maybe adding like whatever would be good there, then just go ahead and do that, and that's going to develop your building skills by doing that as well. So don't feel too much pressure to recreate it really accurately. Remember to have fun with it as well. So the next thing is to know your cheats in game. Really, this is so important to know your cheats, and it sounds really basic as well, but it's something that a lot of people forget, and it makes knowing everything about the cheats and shortcuts in game makes the whole building process so much easier. So this isn't the type of video where I'm going to sit through and show you all the different shortcuts and everything, but there are loads of other videos that tell you that. This is just to let you know that that is something that you should learn, and it's not something you're going to learn overnight. I didn't really sit down and think, okay, let's learn all those shortcuts. It's something that I picked up over time, but it is something that you really want to try and do, because like I was saying, it makes things so much easier. So for example, when you're placing down an item and then it goes away and you have to go in the catalogue to get it again if you want to place it a second time, holding down shift as you do that keeps the item in your cursor, so you can keep placing it and placing it. And then other things as well, for like the cheat bar, like move objects, knowing that, and that's something I kind of just put on automatically when I load up the game. And the cheats for getting up debug menus and things like that is also really helpful to know. Also in game, in the middle of the screen at the top, there is a toolbar there, and if you hover over any of those, for most of them it does have a shortcut, a keyboard shortcut attached to it, so then you can learn those easily. And those are especially really good ones to use, because having to move, as easy as it sounds to move your mouse over to click on one, having a shortcut for your keyboard and knowing those is so much easier as well. And the next thing is to make colour palettes for your build. Now this one's kind of a little bit random, but I'll explain what I mean. Especially if you're new at a build and you may not know all the wall coverings that's available for exterior of builds. This is what this mostly applies for rather than interiors, but you could be doing a build and you're not really too sure what to kind of use on the exterior. Just kind of place at the front of the build, say like a 3 tile wall, and I also think 3 is a good number for different types of colour swatches for the exterior of a build, like 2 or 3 I would say. So say for example you're building a suburban home, I normally choose, like I said, 2 or 3 colour swatches. One of them being like a siding, and then the other one being like a stone or a brick for feature walls and pop outs. Now I don't do this as much, but you may have seen it in speed builds in the past, but I'll do it at the front and just kind of choose different ones, because I now know a lot of the things that I like to use from the colour swatches and wall coverings. But to kind of just make a wall like that and choose, a few siding colour swatches and a few stones and put them together to try and find a combination that works and looks right for the build. You could even do that with windows and doors as well, putting them together with them to see if they kind of work well with with the colours that you've chosen, and it just helps a lot with structuring the build. And so like I was saying, I normally choose 2 or 3 different colour swatches. A siding colour, like I said, so for example I'll choose one, and you can just put that up the walls from the top and the bottom level. And then for pop outs or anything like that, I'll choose a stone and put that down as well. But to make things even more interesting, like I said, you could use 3 different wall coverings, and the way I do that is by taking that siding colour that I decided on and using a slightly darker tone of it for the bottom floor, and then using a slightly lighter tone on the top floor. And you know, it can look a little bit odd seeing that, but you can kind of polish it all off with exterior trims and makes it all look nicer and rounds everything off a bit better. So it's kind of just a simple addition, adding in an extra colour swatch to the exterior, but it does add a lot more to the build, I think, and makes it look a little bit more interesting to look at as well. The next thing is something that I just mentioned before, and that's pop outs on builds. Now, I know it is a very basic thing that a lot of people tell you about is to add when it comes to builds, but especially for beginners as well, I remember doing this a lot with the earlier builds, is looking back at the builds and seeing how just boring and plain and simple they look, especially on the sides, and just adding little bump outs and pop outs here and there really add a lot to the build, and again adds a lot more interest when you're looking at them. And there is a lot that you can do with pop outs as well, and I'll explain a few of those now. So on the front of a build, you know, you can just put a pop out of just like a few tiles, and then go ahead and choose a window to put with that. And then, you know, you can leave it how it is and just have it on the first floor, or you can extend it and just have it on both the floors and then work on the roofing for that, or not extend it to both the floors and just keep the pop out on the first floor, and then you can add a roof into that, such as a half gabled or a gabled roof. But that's not all you could do. You could extend that pop out even more and turn it into like a sunroom, so then you can put some bigger windows on it, and then also go ahead and put a glass roof on top of that as well. Another option would be extended how I just done, and then instead of putting a glass roof on top, make it like a balcony area, and then that can be used for like an upstairs bedroom and having a balcony area for that. So that's just a few things you can do with pop outs. It doesn't have to be just a one tile pop out from the build. There's lots of different purposes for them, and you can even make like a 1x2 tile pop out and kind of have it extend up the side of the home as a chimney and choose a brick or stone colour swatch for that. And the last thing on my list for today is terrain paints and terrain tools. So again, it is a fairly broad and basic thing to mention, but I do still think it's very important to make use of, especially if you're doing budget builds, because remember, terrain paints are free, and especially when it comes to making pathways for builds, I always use terrain paints rather than using stone tiles and making a pathway that way, because not only is it free, but it also looks a lot more natural as well. And then once you make your pathway, there is still more that you can do with the terrain paints. So for example, you could take a dirt colour swatch and use that to make an outline of the pathway and add like sort of like a bit of shading to that as well, or do the same thing but instead with dirt, use another stone or gravel and kind of use a darker colour again to do a bit of shading and make things look a little bit more finished off. And say for example you have a big sort of grass area in the build that you're not really too sure on how to use it up, so you've added in flower beds and you've done enough of those but you still have a lot of grass space left, then what you can do is to choose the terrain paint tool that's squared shape and fits the same size as a tile on the floor, and put the grid on, and you can choose a lighter colour grass and a darker colour grass and make stripes, and it looks like a really nice perfect mowed lawn. So that's another option as well, and it looks really great in suburban houses, makes like the perfect suburban look I think as well. So that's another option you can do, and again remember it's all free. And then for terrain tools, I've got one little thing to mention. Now this isn't really a terrain tools tutorial, I'm just going to mention a thing that I really love to do with terrain tools, and again remember to go and have a look at other terrain tool tutorials to find out more about this and all the other amazing things you can do. But one really simple thing you can do with terrain tools, and it's really great for suburban homes, is on driveways that lead up to a garage door. So although it doesn't look too bad, it doesn't look that right when you have, you know, just a garage door like it is on a foundation, and it's kind of like a jump up to the garage door from like the ground. So to kind of fix that a little bit, in the past, you know, I've done things like using roofs and kind of manipulating that to make like it look like a ramp, but to make it look even more natural you can just use terrain tools. So what I tend to do is choose the tool where I can adjust the height up to where the foundation is, and then I go ahead and just fill that in and then manipulate the terrain there. I then go back down to ground level and kind of just start to even things up a little bit and make the driveway to the garage flow a little bit better. And then finally I go in with the smooth tool and smooth everything out to make it look like a nice smooth ramp, and it's not too noticeable the jump up from the ground to the garage door. And then you choose a gravel or stone to fill that in and make a driveway. So that's it for today's video. I really hope you found it useful. Let me know if you want to see another one of these types of videos in the future. Leave a like, share and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!